So many moons ago, we ranked the original boss weapons in Elden Ring, and we're back with the DLC expansion of that video for the low price of $69.99. You get the deluxe edition of this expansion ranked video that contains a brand new quest and new skin for your character.
By the time I pay all my scientists, all my people in my research department, lab coats, it's a wash. Well, why you do it then, baby Billy? Well, because I'm selfless.
Let's go! So as a warning, this video will contain spoilers of all the new boss weapons. I won't be showing any of the boss fights themselves, but like the names of the weapons sometimes tell you a little bit about that boss, so just giving you a little bit of a warning. Let me know your rankings in the comments down below. We'll start with the worst, we'll work our way to the best. The worst is the Greatsword of Radahn, the light version. Now this is a colossal sword that does physical and magic damage. The weapon skill on this version is a light speed slash, which pops you up in the air and then you do like a little slashy thing and then you come down and then these like light effects like happen afterwards. Now you can charge this up and like that will like deal additional like follow-up attacks. The real downside to this and sort of these Radahn weapons anyway, which is like across the board kind of disappointing, is that we already have a Radahn weapon. These act essentially exactly the same, except they have different weapon skills. The like physical and magic damage here is basically identical across all three of these different variants. Now this one is the worst of these because of that Ash of War specifically, right? You'll 100% notice how bad this is when you compare it to the other one. But the downside here is that like the hyper armor effect here isn't great. When you do get in the air, you can sort of get knocked out of it. The damage is not great at all. It's like pretty bad. You can miss very easily on that effect, like in the wind up time where you're like winding up to like deal the damage there. What really makes this stand out as being the worst is the fact that it is a colossal sword that is exactly the same as two other colossal swords except with a different weapon skill, and this being the worst of those weapon skills, it's like why would you possibly run this one when you could run the others? Now you can do the same like, you know, twinned weapon two-handed thing where you get two great swords, exactly the same as you can with the others. Just thought I'd mention that, but overall this is the worst on this list. The next is a big old sunflower called the Shadow Sunflower Blossom. This is a colossal weapon that does physical and holy damage. Now, if you're wondering how this scales, it does actually scale better with faith than it does with strength, and like it doesn't really scale with dexterity like at all. The weapon skill here, Shadow Sunflower Headbutt, is essentially you like activate the sunflower itself, slam it into the ground, and you can follow this up for 2 additional attacks. This is okay. I kind of like it, but like the animation is too slow without enough AoE to hit bosses that like to dodge. So by the time like you wind this effect up, they like, you know, input read and they've like dodged already, and then you slam it on the ground and they're already moved out of the way because the AoE is so small, it doesn't actually hit them. And then the downside here is that like you are using this very slow weapon skill that you'll take a ton of damage while you're actually doing this. And then like if you try and use those follow-up attacks, like those extra 2 follow-ups on any enemy that's still alive that you would want to be using that on, basically bosses, they're going to be chunking down your health while you're winding up those follow-up attacks as well. So not a whole lot of value in using that. It's an interesting colossal weapon because it is physical and holy. There's not like a whole lot of those in that sort of variant. And I guess if you want to cosplay as a sunflower, like you've got that value there as well, but just not a whole lot of good things going for it in my opinion. So that's why it finishes second last on this list. Elden Ring has one of the best soundtracks in modern gaming, and when I hit the gym, I want to keep the vibes going. That's why I want to tell you about Raycon's everyday earbuds and their new upgraded model that now features active noise cancellation. When Raycon reached out to try their new upgraded Raycon's everyday earbuds, I jumped on the chance, really. I've honestly never had a good pair of wireless earbuds, typically picking the cheapest option on the market at the time, but let me tell you, the sound quality difference here is off the charts. I was taking them out of this sleek, dreamy clouds protective case and accidentally hit a button that changed the sound profile, and I was like, I don't know what that means, bro, but cool. And so I just started listening to my soundtrack, and my gosh, I was blown away by the incredible bass boosting sound profile that was streaming that beautiful Elden Ring soundtrack right into my brain. Now, not only does Raycon have seamless touch controls, including a reject calls button for when those clingy bosses won't leave you alone, 32-hour battery life with a new quick charge function, they're weatherproof and sweat resistant, so perfect for the gym or just standing out in the rain. They have optimized gel tips with nice ergonomic design design that comfortably fit the widest range of ears. Plus, they actually give you more silicone gel tip options out of the box than any other earbuds I've ever bought. The real kicker here is that Raycon offers the same audio quality as the big guys, but at half the price. Sounds pretty good, right? With over 3 million of their previous everyday earbuds sold, you can trust that Raycon is doing earbuds the right way. Now is the time to check them out because they just launched their upgraded model of the best-selling everyday earbuds, still at that same affordable price. So if you're looking for a new set of earbuds for yourself or a gift for someone, Father's Day is just around the corner here in Australia, then I would recommend the Raycon's everyday earbuds. Click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/Norza to get 15% off your Raycon purchase plus free shipping. Thanks Raycon for sponsoring this video. The Poleblade of the Bud is next. This is a only physical damage weapon that is a Howl Blade that also scales with Arcane and has Scarlet Rot buildup. I really like this weapon and I really wanted to like the weapon skill, and that's the only thing that's really struggling here, right? So it has extremely high Arcane scaling and then it does scale with Dex afterwards, but Arcane is its main stat. Really like the normal like light combo series. It does have like slashing light combos, which is different compared to most halberds that are a bit more piercing based, but you can still, you know, grab a shield and do the pokey thing if you did want to do it that way. The weapon skill, Romania's Purification, will jump you in the air and you'll deal like 2 large sweep slashes. Those slashes, both of them, are on the 1 button input. They're not separate, so it's still the 1 attack. Now the issue here is that while this is an okay skill, you don't get enough hyper armor on that first like upswing, so you can get knocked out of it. It's also super easy to miss small enemies, like if they just like happen to move slightly to the left. By the time you've like jumped up in the air and you do this massive swing that throws you past them and then you go up again and you swing past, it's very easy to miss them, like even if they're not even trying to like dodge the attack. You'll obviously hit larger enemies with it pretty easily, but it's very easy to miss. And the Scarlet Rot build up here isn't amazing. Like it does definitely build up Scarlet Rot relatively quickly, but it's also not enough physical damage or Scarlet Rot build up just on its own to be like, yeah, like this is a really quality weapon that you should absolutely use, which is a little disappointing because I kind of like this weapon. I really like the just general attack animations. I like that it's another Scarlet Rot weapon and you can build up that Scarlet Rot. I just think that for something like this, it should either have much more Scarlet Rot build up being a boss weapon, or it should do more damage, or the weapon skill should be a little better than it is. But it's still a weapon that you could make a build for. Like the first two, I probably wouldn't. This, like I could kind of see you making some sort of a Scarlet Rot build with, but it's still not like incredible. Putrescence Cleaver is next. This is a great axe that does physical and magic. What is interesting about this is another one of those rare weapons in the DLC that do magic damage, but they scale with Arcane rather than intelligence, and it has frostbite buildup, although because of the slow attack animations of the great axe, very rarely will you trigger that effect. Now the unique part about this is the spinning guillotine Ash of War. Now this you can essentially just spam as long as you have the stamina to keep spamming it. You can just keep triggering this like spinning guillotine and just keep spinning away. That initial hit does the most damage, so you won't get that same amount of damage on each like swing past. It's significantly less, but it is quite fast in compared to just like your normal attack animations that you would get from like a great axe. And you can actually use a strong attack as well to like trigger a different like finishing animation that'll do like a sort of a spirally spin to like finish the animation that does a little bit more damage as well. So lots of interesting things with this weapon. Also has a really cool look. I like how it sort of like curves around like the body here. Not like a ton to say here overall. Like a solid weapon to 2-hand for the physical and magic, especially like an Arcane 2-hand heavy weapon, which is very rare. You don't get a whole lot of those sort of options. Interesting like weapon skill, but not incredible. Definitely better than the first ones on this list, as it is viable to use for large boss encounters and actually get some value out of. Although like I wouldn't be just like spamming it constantly unless you're like got enough stamina for it. Like you can sort of stun lock like Millennia and stuff like that because of the stagger it does do. So definitely got some value there, but not like top of the list value. The Gazing Finger is next, and these two I actually really struggled with the order of them, but I do prefer the Gazing Finger for a couple of reasons. It's a colossal weapon that does physical and magic damage as well. The unique part about this is it requires intelligence and faith in order to wield it. Now, something to note here is that it does not scale with dexterity or faith like whatsoever. So you only need to hit those minimum caps. It does scale with intelligence and strength. Mostly strength though, so you definitely want to pump strength if you are going to use this weapon. It has a unique like heavy attack where you like basically stamp the finger down, like you like smack it down. It does really, really good damage. It also does good like poise damage, so you can break stances in that way. The weapon skill here, the Kotower's Resentment, is interesting. I kind of like this. Now, it's got a bit more range in terms of like an Ash of War here. Like, it will actually deal a solid amount of damage to enemies in front of you, and like with a little bit of distance, which is good, especially for like a colossal weapon like this, where you're probably not really running any sort of range spells and that sort of thing, so you get a little bit of value out of that. You can hold the button down here to then increase that range a little bit further and increase the damage. I do like this weapon a lot. Like, it's just general attacks in terms of the amount of physical damage and magic damage it does is actually quite high. The scaling here is really good. So it's really a solid weapon outside of it having like a unique Ash of War on it, which is probably not the reason that makes it like incredibly solid. It's really just that overall like attack rating scaling with physical and magic damage. It does like quite good damage in that way. And then because of that, you know, you can buff it with your Magic Scorpion Charms and like your two-handed talismans and all that stuff as well. And obviously your Shard of Alexander if you're leaning into the weapon skill, same as you can with everything else, but lots of value from this weapon if you wanted to go that route. Greatsword of Radahn, the Lord version, is exactly the same as the light version, except it has a different weapon skill that is significantly better. This weapon skill is called Promised Consort. Now, this weapon skill has multiple follow-up attacks, so if you keep using the attack animation, you'll keep spamming it, but you have like a small wind-up, and then you swing your weapon around, then you can swing it again, then you can swing it again, and then you jump up in the air and do like a little spinny attack. Basically like that same attack animation that's probably killed you like 200 times during his boss fight. It definitely killed me 200 times during the boss fight. But the reason this is better is because you've got control over those animations. They're quite fast. You don't need to do those follow-up attacks if you don't want to. You just do that initial like swing, and then go back and sort of dodge and go back into that sort of animation. You get hyper armor during those weapon swings as well. So if you can tank the damage, you can just stand there and keep on swinging just like he does for you in the fight. So you've got the value out of that as well. Now, there isn't much else to say, but it is definitely better than the light version. It's really the only difference is the weapon skill. Greatsword of Damnation is next. This is a greatsword, you might have guessed, with physical and holy damage. Now, this greatsword is your typical greatsword with its standard greatsword attack combinations here, so they're a little bit faster than a lot of the other like larger colossal swords and things that are on this list. The downside to this weapon, in my opinion, is that it doesn't do Frenzied Flame build up at all. Like, it comes from that boss. Why doesn't it? That's a bit weird. Anyway, it has poor faith scaling. It mostly scales with strength, so it's not great if you're looking to do some sort of like faith hybrid build here. You're really mostly just leaning into the strength aspect here. It does really good stagger, and you get like good hyper armor in the first part of the animation of the Ash of War itself, which is called Golden Crux, where you essentially jump in the air, slam the weapon down, and you can follow up to like skewer up these like skewer effects that has really good range on it. It does quite solid damage. It's very easy to damage enemies with this, especially smaller enemies, and you get like good value out of it. The downside is you can get knocked out of the second part of that animation when you sort of linger there for a little bit before you like smack it down, but it's still quite a solid weapon in order to use. And because it is a great sword, you've got a lot of the flexibilities in terms of its attack combinations compared to some of the more colossal weapons on this list that are a lot slower to use, a lot less flexible. Plus you got all the extra poise damage things you get from two-handing something like this. You could even combine it with something else. Lots of value in the Greatsword of Damnation. The Sword Lance is a heavy thrusting sword that only deals physical damage. Now, this is technically a greatsword and lance. So what that means is that it's R1, like light attacks, are the heavy thrusting sword attack combinations. The R2, the heavy attacks, are the lance attack combinations. So you've got a little bit of flexibility in terms of its attack combos there and its animation usage, a little bit of fun that can be used. It's also unique in the fact that it is just a standard weapon. It uses smithing stones to upgrade. It doesn't use somber stones like basically every other weapon on like any, I think it is the only actual like Remembrance boss weapon that uses smithing stones to upgrade. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong there. Now, it comes with the unique Ash of War that can actually be moved to any other like colossal weapons and similar weapons as well, called the Spinning Gravity Thrust, which what you do here is you jump up in the air and then you do like a rotating spin towards the target. Then you jump back up in the air again, and if you press the button again, you do the exact same animation again. Now, this hits the enemy multiple times, so you can use things like Millicent's Prosthetic and Rottenwind Insignia, all those successive attack buffs there. You can also change the affinity on this because it is an Ash of War and just a standard weapon here. If you wanted to add blood loss or cold or what have you, right? You can add different effects to this. You could even remove it, put it on a different weapon that you prefer to use. If you don't like the heavy thrusting sword here, lots of value and flexibility, and I think that's why I enjoyed this a lot, not only because it does have really solid damage on its own, and I like the heavy thrusting sword attack combinations here that you do get, but just the damage output here when you buff it the right way, and the flexibility of being able to put this on some other weapon if you wanted to is also quite valuable here. So that's why it lands at number 3 on this list. We got 2 more to go, and the next one is Renala's Twin Blades. These are twinned light greatswords that deal physical and magic damage, and then the second one, when you dual wield them, the one in the left hand also does fire damage. So something to note here, if you've just got it in one hand, it only does magic. It's that other one that actually does the fire. Now what's unique about this is not only the fact that it's a light greatsword, which is only a couple of these, so you get those really fun flowing attack combinations that are really fun, and you can sort of flow the heavy attacks into the light attacks, which is really great to use. Now the Moon and Fire stance is the weapon skill here, and similar to the Night and Flames weapon stance, if you use the light attack when you're holding the stance, it'll be magic. If you use the heavy attack, it will be fire. The heavy attack, being the fire variant, is much more valuable for like a AoE. If you're like got a lot of enemies around you, you've got that sort of fire effect that goes all the way around you, so you can damage enemies in that way. And then you want to use the moon effect, the magic one, if there are enemies that are closer to you, or say a single target that you want to follow up with. The difficulty with this weapon is that it does require both intelligence and faith in order to use, because of like the fire requirements. And in terms of its overall damage output, it's definitely not the highest on this list, because it is like a light greatsword. Like, you know, its overall scaling with both physical magic and fire isn't incredible, but I just really like these weapons. I like the feel of using these like twin blades, like the light greatsword attack combinations, and being able to use something that's entirely unique, which is, I think, is what's really interesting about these compared to a lot of the other weapons on this list, especially, you know, a couple of great swords of a particular individual that are just colossal swords that we already had in the game before. So I just like that these are something unique and special, and that's definitely why there's probably a little bit of bias in my opinion, but that they end up so high on my personal list. One more to go. That is the Spear of the Impaler. This is a great spear that does physical and fire damage. It does scale with dexterity and faith. Now, this has just so many interesting things going for it. First of all, it's got great like poise and stagger because it is a great spear. They all sort of do. The heavy attack here actually throws the spear, and if you charge that heavy attack, it does like a little flame explosion on impact as well, which you can actually buff with things like the Smithing Talisman or the Axe Talisman, that sort of thing as well. Now, you'll also get Mesmer's Assault, which is definitely the best weapon skill out of all of the weapon skills that we have talked about today. Now, the initial attack here on the first import, you jump up in the air and do like one quick swing, which does do a wave of fire out in front of you. There's actually a lot of range on that fire. You don't need to be immediately in front of enemies. You might not realize that, but you don't need to be that close. If you press the button again, you'll do like a stabbing attack where you'll like rapidly stab the target, and then if you press the button again, you'll jump up in the air, you'll slam the weapon into the ground, spears will come out, and then they will damage the target for one final thing. The damage on this entire combo is very, very strong, and because it is fire-based, Fire Scorpion Charm, Flame Grant Me Strength, all those fire-based buffs you've got. Plus, you can buff this with Shard of Alexander or any of the new equipment like the Mesmer's Fire Knight stuff or Mesmer's Helmet himself. Like, you've got a lot of buffs that really work with this weapon, plus all the fire buffs, and it's got really solid physical and fire damage. It's just an all-around a fantastic weapon with great combos. The unique, like being able to throw the weapon as well for a bit of range without having to lean into any incantations, plus an incredible weapon skill that does an insane amount of damage that you don't even need to use the follow-ups for, right? Like, you can use them if you can get the attacks off, but that first attack does enough damage that there's like, we just don't need it, right? Like, you can just use that first attack, get that solid amount of damage, then, you know, dodge, move around, that sort of thing. But let me know your list in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.